Hi, my name is Barbara Cooper, and thanks for joining with the Fidalgo Democrats tonight. I am the chairperson of the Fidalgo Dems, and what we're going to do is have everybody muted, and then later on you'll be able to unmute yourself when there's time for questions. And like I said, that's just to try to keep the background noise to a little more limited. And so I'm going to start the meeting, and we'd like to start with an acknowledgement, and Sarah Peterson is going to read that for us. Sarah? Okay, you need to unmute yourself, Sarah.
If she was muted,
Oh, there. I only had to jump on it 5 times to make it behave. Okay. The Fidalgo Democrats would like to acknowledge that we gather on Indigenous land, a traditional territory of the Coast Salish. In particular, we note the Samish and the Swinomish, keepers of the land and communities of Fidalgo Island in the past, present, and future.
Thank you very much, Sarah. All right, we are, just for folks who don't know, Fidalgo Democrats is an independent democratic association with our focus on education. And I'd like to, if there are any elected officials or any Democratic Party officials, please let me know. You can go down to the reactions, and there's a little hand raising symbol, and that way I can call on you and let everybody know who's here.
Yeah.
Don't be shy.
Actually, Jackie is really an elected official.
Right, I know, Jackie.
Sorry, no.
Jackie Brunson is our Skagit County Treasurer, and she is here. Thank you so much for coming and for all you do. Difficult task, especially right now with taxes coming in. And Lee, why don't you introduce yourself?
Well, I'm actually really safe with the PCO for Dewey Beach Precinct 119. And I'm also the chair of the Skagit Democrats Gala and Fundraising Committee, as well as the Commissioner District 1 representative on the e-board. It's wonderful to be with everybody. Thank you.
Right, thanks, Lee. Carol Sullivan, do you want to introduce yourself? We have a shy group tonight.
Great, I did it.
Oh, all right.
I'm a PCO in Mount Vernon 311, and I'm also the Action and Advocacy Chair for the Skagit League of Women Voters.
Right, okay, thank you. Is there anyone else, any other elected officials or Democratic Party officials that I missed? All right, now we do have a little, Jan Robinson would like to speak for a couple of minutes before we start. Jan, where are you? I could have sworn I saw Jan coming in.
Yeah, she's in, let's see.
Yeah.
She was hiding herself.
Jan Robinson, can you?
I think Jan was, she must have trouble getting in. I'll try to give her a call and see what's going on.
Oh, okay. So we can go back when she comes in, if she's having any problems. Thanks a lot, Brad. Okay, before I introduce Cindy Black, I'd like to mention Brad Klur, who is our Zoom support person. He works with Skagit Democrats as well, and he's going to handle a lot of the technical issues, as you could hear. And we can explain about raising hands a little bit later. And Zane Butler is our videographer, I'm not saying that right. Anyway, he is the guy that's going to put out the YouTube for us. After this is being recorded and after we're done, Zane will put that out for people who weren't able to attend. All right, I would like to introduce our speaker tonight, Cindy Black, who is the executive director of the group that's going to be, it's Fix Democracy First. And she's been the director since 2016. And I'll give a little background of her. She was also the campaign director for WAMN's successful statewide 2016 ballot initiative 735 campaign, making Washington the 18th state to call for a US constitutional amendment to end court decisions like Citizens United. Yay. She's active with several state and national coalitions addressing voter access, money in elections, alternative voting systems, and increasing civic participation. Cindy is committed to helping pass pro-democracy legislation locally and nationally, as well as building an active citizens movement through ongoing coalition building, common sense reforms, and public outreach. Cindy, if there's anything else you'd like to add, please feel free.
No, that sounds just fine. Thank you. That's plenty. All right, should I go ahead and get started?
Yeah, if you wouldn't
Okay,
mind.
great. So thanks everybody for being here tonight. We're going to be talking about the filibuster. I'm going to share my screen here. Hopefully everyone can see that all right. And if not, just let me know.
Yes.
Great. So the filibuster. So it's been getting a whole lot of press these days, and I think it's an important thing to be talking about. And I've had a lot of people express interest in learning more about the filibuster. So I want to thank everyone for inviting me here tonight. In particular, I want to thank Barbara, who's been in coordination with me to set this up. So thank you, Barbara, and everyone else. I do want to mention that Fix Democracy First, we are a nonpartisan pro-democracy organization. Our mission statement is basically we work for free and fair elections and government policies that reflect the will of the people and not the power of big moneyed interests. So basically, that's what we do. So let's get right in and talk about what is the filibuster. And I did put some graphics in here to make it a little bit more interesting. I also have my slides saved as a PDF that I'll be happy to share with folks afterwards. And I do have a link of resources and references for people to check out if you're interested. And I'll make sure to send that over, and that can get forwarded to people that need it. So what is the filibuster? So basically the filibuster is more of an informal term that's used to attempt to block any or delay any Senate action, either on a bill or some other issue. Oftentimes it's by offering numerous procedural motions, amendments, things like that, anything to delay or obstruct an action or a bill to move forward. The Senate cloture rule, which that's what requires 60 members to end a debate on most topics, and that before they can move to a vote. So basically what that means is that if someone is going forward and putting different amendments or wanting to speak and declare a filibuster, they can do that. In order to end the debate, there has to be 60 members to vote to end the debate. Actually, the word originated from a Dutch word for freebooter, someone who took booty or loot, and it came to mean a legislator who is pirating parliamentary procedures. And we can see there with Jimmy Stewart and Mr. Smith goes to Washington, which is not how the filibuster is normally used. So let's talk about the early beginnings in the creation of the filibuster. There's always been a lot of long speeches and delayed action since the beginning of the Senate in 1789. But there's some things that happened, but it's not in the Constitution. That's not where it comes from. It came later than that. In 1806, Vice President Aaron Burr advised the Senate to remove its rules provision, formerly known as a previous question motion, allowing for a simple majority to force a vote on a question that's being debated. But it really, again, the filibuster really wasn't used much then. And then in 1841, there was a fight over chartering the Bank of the U.S. John Calhoun was a U.S. Southern senator who organized other Southerners to continue to offer amendment after amendment to delay the bill so it would go past summer adjournment. And he continued, even though he didn't win the bill, he didn't have enough votes to stop it. He continued those tactics ongoing up into the Civil War. And then officially in 1917, urged by President Wilson, this is where Senate Rule 22 came aboard and was adopted, allowing the Senate to invoke cloture and limit debate with a 2/3 majority vote. That rule was first put to test in 1919 when the Senate invoked cloture to end a filibuster against the Treaty of Versailles. So that's some of the early beginnings of the filibuster and how it became to be. And then historically, it really wasn't until the 1880s that even the term filibuster began to be used on a regular basis. And even then, the filibuster was rarely used. It required the senator to actually physically stay on the Senate floor and continue their speech making. That took a lot of time. It ate up a whole lot of time. And so it wasn't used very often because you had to do that. You know, we've heard stories about people reading Green Eggs and Ham, the US Constitution, and all kinds of other stuff to do the filibuster. Its impact was limited, causing some delay, but it didn't derail a whole lot of legislation. And almost every filibustered measure before 1880 was eventually passed. So even though it was created before then, it wasn't used a whole lot in the 1800s and early 1900s. What happened during the Civil War era, that's when it really began to start getting used more frequently. And it was used especially against the admission of states depending on their slavery status. So the South and the Southern senators really pushed it to push against states that were against slavery, like California and Kansas. And then during the Reconstruction and post-Reconstruction eras, senators used the filibuster against civil rights bill, against deployment of troops to the southern states, repayment of income tax from the Civil War. It was also used to block anti-lynching bills in 1922 and 1935. And it was almost successful in stopping the Civil Rights Act of 1965, but luckily it didn't, and that bill went forward. So I want to get into talking about the rise of the filibuster. By this chart here, and this is from The Economist, which is a little bit more conservative, but it showed, I like this chart because it showed over time how much the filibuster was used. We don't really see an uptick in the filibuster until we get into the 70s, 80s, 90s, and then in the last couple of decades. Basically, senators from both parties were trying to get rid of the filibuster all through the 19th century, but they weren't successful. And then the use of that cloture rule of 60 votes to cut off a debate has become far more common in this last century. And in fact, more cloture motions have been filed in the last 2 decades than in the 80 years prior. And you can see by this chart. And in fact, the Senate adopted new precedents in the 2010s to allow simple majority to end the debate on nominations. And what we know about that too is they just have to really threaten that they're going to do a filibuster. And so you're not seeing people do these long speeches anymore on the floor, because now you can just do simple majority, or you can just state that you want to do a filibuster and then do it. And then I'm sorry, I confused one point there. The new precedent that they adopted in the 2010s was that to end a debate on nominations, like to court of nominations or to department heads, State Department appointees and things like that. But it also, what they did is basically you just threat that you're going to do a filibuster, and basically it shuts everything down because they have to go around and try to get that 2/3 vote, 60 votes before they know they're going to be doing it. So now it's even just the threat of the filibuster, but we've seen a huge rise in the filibuster in the last 2 decades in particular. And I can make some arguments for that and about why that is. And it has a lot to do with the moneyed interests began to take a whole lot different approach starting in the 70s, 80s, and beyond to get more rights to businesses. Businesses got, especially big corporations, got way more interested in controlling how the government worked and wanted to infiltrate all parts of the government so they could control regulation, get better tax breaks, and all these other kinds of things. That's a whole other discussion we could go into when we can get into some of those court decisions like Buckley versus Vallejo, money equals speech, and then of course the Citizens United decision that basically said corporations could give as much money as they wanted to, and then super PACs and all these other kinds of things. So it's interesting, this list was, I thought, really important to show because this just shows what happened with the cloture votes per the administration since the Johnson era. So if you look back, Johnson, Nixon, Ford, they had one, Ford had none. And then Carter and Reagan each had 6. There was a little bit more opposition. H.W. Bush only had 1. Clinton, that started to go up a little bit with 15. And then you saw George W. Bush, 39. But then you get to Obama, and then there was a whole lot of stuff going on, because if you remember with the Obama administration, there was still, the House of Representatives was still controlled by the Republicans, and it went back and forth a couple of times. There was a short period, there was Democrats in control, and that's where they were pushing it. But it was really attack against Obama's administration itself. And then with Trump, oh my goodness, 314 with him, because there was all kinds of effort to kind of stop some of the kind of stuff that he was doing. So we can see a huge jump in how the filibuster has been used in the cloture votes just in the last 2 administrations with Obama and Trump. And the cartoons I thought were kind of interesting because it just tells you a little bit. That one here is apparently the rules are the game. So let's talk a little bit about the filibuster arguments for and against. So some people still favor the filibuster. Lots of people want to get rid of it. I like this cartoon because I thought it was interesting because they're, going back and forth. You have Dr. Biden saying, I'm a little concerned about this serious blockage, talking about the filibuster going to democracy. And then you have Mitch McConnell, Dr. McConnell saying, it's the only thing keeping you alive. And then you have Uncle Sam saying, can I get a second opinion? So I thought this was humorous because this is really what's going on in a comical way, but not so comical in reality. So what are some of the arguments in favor of keeping the filibuster? Some of these I could make an argument against, I'll have to tell you, but I do want to let you know what people are saying about what they think about the filibuster. So a lot of people think it promotes compromise on legislation. I don't see a whole lot that happening, but that's one of the arguments in favor. It provides constraints on majority power. It supports public confidence in American governments. I don't see that, but that's one of the arguments. And it reinforces the structure of the Senate. And that's an interesting thing that we can talk about, the structure of the Senate. And that's a bigger conversation. But some of those are the arguments in favor. Some of the arguments against is it does not support a deliberate process. It's connected to racist policies, especially during the Civil War and the Civil Rights Movement. It does not have historical merit, and it overrepresents the interest of a small minority, and it promotes obstructionism. So those are some of the arguments against it. I mean, there's a lot more that I've heard, but I wanted to highlight some of them so at least you get an idea of why are people against it? Why are people for it? So now there's a lot of discussion about, should we eliminate the filibuster? Should we keep it? What should we do? So people that eliminate it, they think one of the biggest reasons to eliminate it is because of its decades use in opposition to civil rights, whether it was the anti-lynching bills, whether it was the civil rights actions like the Civil Rights Act of 1965, and a variety of other things. In fact, the majority of times we've seen a lot of Republicans use it is against civil rights bills of something, you know. And also too, you've seen the Democrats use it a lot to kind of go against, you know, trying to forward legislation that actually doesn't necessarily help. So I know this is a Democratic group. I'm trying to stay nonpartisan, but I figure I don't have to do that as tightly with this group. Even though we're nonpartisan, I got to tell you, it's really hard these days because I don't see a lot of Republicans out there doing this kind of work to work on democracy. We just don't. Another reason to eliminate it is that the abuse of the filibuster means just one senator can stop legislation. We can call out Senator Manchin from West Virginia is a Democrat, but he's recently written an article, an op-ed saying that he doesn't want to eliminate the filibuster. And you have a couple other Democrats in that ballpark as well. And that's one reason why I think they say it, especially him, is he's in a more of a conservative state. And he is a more moderate or Democrat. Almost leaning Republican in some ways, or at least the way Republicans might have used to be, not anymore. Another reason to eliminate the filibuster is it is an archaic rule that really does interfere with legislation move forward. It's been used by the minority party to obstruct lots of different things. And also too, I want to point out the US House doesn't have a rule like this, nor does most state senates. There's 14 different states that do have some type of filibuster rule, but the majority of states operate, including Washington State, in the Senate without the filibuster rule or the cloture requirements. So those are some reasons to eliminate it. A couple of arguments I've heard to keep it is saying the majority party is eventually going to be back in the minority and will rue the day that it made it harder for itself in the future. I have some mixed feelings about that because, to be honest, the Republicans, when they're in power, they have eliminated the filibuster when it suits them. And they would do that again. If the roles were reversed, if say there was a Republican House, Senate, and President, I guarantee you they would get rid of the filibuster to pass whatever they wanted to if they had those tight margins like they are now. So even though that's one of the arguments, I don't know if that really holds a whole lot of water there. It also gives single senators greater power within the chamber and useful to their own personal power and policy goals. Again, you could make arguments against that one too. That's not necessarily a good thing if you have one senator kind of wielding that kind of power to get things going. So those are some of the eliminate or keep arguments. The other arguments about, well, why don't we just reform it? Here we go. We have a cartoon of Mitch McConnell holding up saying, if you dare cross the bridge, you will experience a scorched earth that can't even begin to imagine. And you see the bridge being the filibuster reform bridge. So he's even trying to hold back reform. But I think the reality is, and we have Fixed Democracy First, have taken a position that we think we should either eliminate or minimally reform the filibuster in some way, because we don't think it really benefits democracy and the type of reforms that we would like to move forward. Excuse me while I take a sip of water. So what are some of the reform type things? So basically, you can make it more difficult to conduct a filibuster, forcing those senators to get back to the way they used to do it and stay on the floor for a long period of time and do that whatever they're reading. You know, they don't want to do that. They're not interested in doing that. That's why it's really easy to do a filibuster right now when you can just threaten a filibuster without actually having to take the time and get on the floor and read whatever you're going to read or take up whatever time you're going to take. Also too, you can exempt certain policy issues from the filibuster and take actions to reduce the number of bills that are subject to that. I'm going to talk a little bit about reconciliation because that's already part of that on tax and budget stuff, which I'm going to talk about in a little bit. So you can say, you know, certain types of bills you can't filibuster. So that's one of the things you can sort of narrow the focus of what a filibuster you can actually use a filibuster on. You can also make it more difficult to initiate a filibuster to begin with. Like I said, right now you just have to threaten there's going to be a filibuster and everybody, you know, panics. So making it more difficult and putting more parameters is one way to do that. You can also decrease the number of votes necessary to end a filibuster. It doesn't have to be 60. What if you lowered it to 52 or 55? There's talk about that. And then you can also shorten the timeline to invoke a cloture and hold a final vote. So you can limit, you can only do it for so long, and then it has to go to a vote by a simple majority. So those are some of the ideas about reforming the filibuster. And there has been some reform on the filibuster. This was a chart that I got from Vox that talked from 2011 to 2019. There were several things to reform the filibuster. In 2011, the minority loses some power to offer amendments after a filibuster is broken. In 2012, a new law allows the president to name 170 appointees without Senate confirmation. So again, this was one of those closing the door that you can't filibuster on to 170 appointees without the Senate confirmation. And then in 2013, non-Supreme Court nominees can be confirmed with just a simple majority vote. And then in 2017, this was again led by Mitch McConnell to get their Supreme Court nominees through. Supreme Court nominees can be confirmed with a simple majority vote. So you can see how things have changed to suit whatever party's in power. And then in 2019, a rules change allowed most nominees to be confirmed with minimal delay. Again, you can see those ones was to hurry up during the Trump administration and get as many appointees in office as they could, especially judicial appointments. That was their real goal, was to stack the courts with as many conservative, and not just conservative, but very young. We've seen, and some of these people are not qualified to be a judge. You know, some of them have never even really been in a court of law or understand the judicial process. But you saw a lot of those people going forward, and many of them extremely young in their 30s and 40s. And these were lifetime appointments, which I must say is a whole other topic that we could go down. But that's just some of the recent reforms that have happened. So it does, obviously, there's nothing in the Constitution that says we can't reform the filibuster. So I mentioned reconciliation, and I think that's really important to talk about, because that goes back to where you have some rules that say certain bills you can't filibuster in simple majority. So one of those is things on taxes, spending, the debt limit, simple majority, 51 votes of the 50. So right now it's 50-50, but the vice president would be the 51st vote, would break the tie. And so basically that would avoid a filibuster right there. Budget resolutions requiring simple majority. And like I said, because the Democrats have 50 seats in the Senate plus a Democratic vice president, that's a way to get tax and spending bills to the president's desk, even if 50 Republicans oppose it. You just have to make sure all 50 Democrats are on board, which is not as easy as you think, because some of them think a little bit different. I mentioned Manchin, and there's a couple others. And then also interesting enough is that since its first use, and so the reconciliation has started happening in the 80s, and there has been, it's been used to enact 22 bills as of this month. So we know that bills can get through, but these are all around taxes and spending and debt limits and things like that, budget stuff, that reconciliation with the simple majority vote. So we know that, again, there's some loopholes that you can get certain bills through without the filibuster. So what's next for the filibuster? I think this is a big question. Like, are we going to be able to deal with the filibuster in our lifetime? I sure hope so. I'm getting older. I don't necessarily want to retire and see this kind of stuff still out there, because I don't think the filibuster personally, and this is my personal feeling about it, I don't think it's good for democracy. It's not really serving a purpose except to give the whoever the minority party is in the Senate power. And the issue with that is that we know that whoever's ever in power can switch the rules however they want to. We also know that the majority of voters prefer a simple majority in the Senate to pass a bill. Here's a chart that was from last October for Data for Progress. And regardless of what party, those green areas, those are people that are somewhat or strongly in favor of just a simple majority vote to pass a bill. So we know that voters, regardless of party, believe that's the way to go. The Senate does have options. I mentioned some of those, including setting a new precedent, changing the rule, placing restrictions on its use. But the reality is absent a large bipartisan Senate majority that favors the curtailing of the right to debate, I'm reluctant to say that I don't think they're going to be able to do it right now. But you never know. They might be able to get something through. And, my optimistic side says, yeah, maybe they could really do it. But then the reality side of me goes, I'm not so sure if they have it in them yet. It may take a bigger majority in the Senate for that to happen. So that's one thing. But right now, how it's looking, it's not looking like the filibuster will go away, but we may see some rules changes with that. They may have people required to get out on the floor and talk for hours on end and waste a lot of time, which is going to be not very appealing to a lot of senators. But I think that might be something that could happen. The other thing I want to mention is that to look at the Senate representation overall, and I put another alternative because this is a bigger lift, but I think it's something that needs to be taken a look at, is that I think the Senate in general needs to be reformed. If you look at representation, it's not very proportional to the population. So there's 50 senators, or 50 states, 2 senators per state, so that you get 100 senators. And every state gets the exact amount of senators. That's not very proportional. So if you look at it, like a state like California has like 68 times the population of a state like Wyoming, but they have the exact same power, those senators from both states in the Senate. And also right now, if you look at it, where it tends to lead to is Republicans tend to be elected in more rural or more or less populated areas and states. So right now, the Democrat senators represent over 41.5 million more people than their Republican counterparts. To me, that's not really good for representation. In the Senate, again, it was meant to keep those small states relevant, but it's not really representing the actual people. And I think it needs to be more proportional. So, and again, that's a bigger conversation, but I do think it's something to take a look at and see what else needs to be reformed. The filibuster is just one thing, but it's a big hurdle, and oftentimes it's a roadblock to getting really important legislation passed. Like right now, we're working on national bills, the For the People Act, which is HR 1 in the House and S1 in the Senate. It passed the House on strict partisan terms, and it's in the Senate now as S1, but we're very concerned it won't get very far. And this is a very important bill that would reform a lot of democracy issues around voting access, money in elections, ethics and accountability, and a variety of other things. The other important bill that we think might get held up is the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act, or DC statehood, which are very important when it comes to democracy. So now I'm going to stop my share and see if there are some questions out there. I got through my slides quicker than thought I was going to, so that gives us plenty of time. I'm also going to put my email address and Fixed Democracy First website in the chat if people want to reach out to me if you have other questions. So I think we can open it up for discussion and questions there, Barbara.
Okay, if what we have to do is at the bottom of your screen on the right-hand side is the word reactions. If you click on that, you will see, I'm going to do it right now, is a raise hand. And I'm going to do that. And it says raise hand. And that will let me know that you have raised your hand and you want to speak, and I can call on you. So I just did that for myself. I obviously don't want to talk to myself, but let me go down. And the first person who's done this is Carol. So Carol Sullivan, if you would like to ask your question, that
I
would be
don't think
great.
she's able to get herself off of mute.
Oh,
Yeah, because if
Oh,
you
dear.
mute everybody, you have to give them permission after that. So you might want to give people permission to unmute themselves.
Yeah, go ahead, Carol.
Carol?
Okay, I was wondering what cloture means, but Rosemary, I think, answered it because I couldn't find it in my dictionary and I didn't want to ask Siri right now. The closing or limitation of debate, that's cloture? That's what that is?
Yeah, basically, that's when you declare that, okay, debate has to end, and then you need, right now, it's the 2/3 rule, so you need 60 votes to actually stop the debate. Yes, but it's calling for to end the debate.
So who calls for the end of the debate in the Senate? Any senator?
It's usually planned, the parties usually work together on that, but yeah, I think from my understanding, and I could be wrong on this because I don't have it in front of me and it's been a while since I read it, I believe that any party or senator can go, okay, it's time to go, but it's usually the party leadership. Usually it's not a rogue senator, it's usually the party leadership that puts their foot down and go, okay, we're done at some point.
Thank you.
Okay, and next is Deborah Peterson. Deborah, can you unmute yourself and ask the question?
Let's see.
Deborah, can you hear me? Let's see if I can. Deborah had put her hand up, so I want her to be able to ask her question.
Yeah, let's see. Okay, go ahead,
Deborah,
Deborah.
oh, there you are.
Unmute yourself, please.
Deborah, if you hold your space bar down, that'll work too.
Deborah, in the right-hand corner, I mean, the left-hand corner is a little microphone. Click on that. You don't have that on
Click
your
on it
screen?
just once.
Okay. Okay. Deborah, do you have, when you go down to the bottom of your screen, there's a microphone that has a line through it. You need to click on that to unline, get the line off. Now you're off. Can you hear us?
While she's getting that, I did find that
Oh,
with the
that's okay.
cloture, you need a minimum of 16 senators must sign a petition for the cloture. And I put that in the chat.
Oh, okay. Well, looking down, I see that we did have there was some people who had asked questions in the chat. And so I'm not sure if I can
Here's
get to
Deborah.
them.
Go ahead, Deborah.
Okay, and I actually put it in chat. I've heard occasions where Rand Paul, for instance, refuses unanimous consent to consider a bill. Is that the same thing as threatening a filibuster, or is that a different rule?
Could you say that one more time? I didn't catch the first part.
I've heard of occasions when unanimous consent is refused Rand Paul has done that in the recent past. Is that a threat of a filibuster, or is it a different rule?
I'm looking that up. So basically a senator may request unanimous consent on the floor to set aside a specific rule of procedure so as to expedite the proceedings. If no senator objects, the Senate permits the action. But if any one senator objects, the request is rejected. That's what that is.
But that's about other rules, not the filibuster.
Yes, yes. Though
Okay.
it could be, I mean, if the filibuster was up for consideration, that's a possibility. I don't know. I haven't heard that about the filibuster.
Thank you.
Okay.
I would be interested to see how other people might feel about the filibuster.
But Barbara, I can't raise my hand. Sorry, I have a question if I may.
Okay, of course.
Cindy, thank you very much for this excellent presentation. I really appreciate you. Just recently, I finished reading a book by Jane Mayer. I don't know if you read it, if you had a chance to read it, called Dark Money, and how, you know, these big corporations and the Coke octopus, so to speak, infiltrating them. And what was frightening for me to hear that Mitch McConnell was actually a what do you call it, a keynote speaker in one of these secret what do you call it, fundraising meetings for the Koch brothers and all their supporters. To my dismay, including Home Depot and some of actually Microsoft and associates also, although Microsoft wasn't as a big player. You know, when I think about this and you remove filibuster, I mean, most likely the Dems, unfortunately, they will end up losing the Senate potentially within the next election or two. It's a reality. The amount of money being dumped into these elections is just mind-boggling. So if you remove the filibuster, what else do the Democrats have to stop this nonsense? I mean, it's unbelievable the way they're they're able to do things when they have power.
Yeah, I'm familiar with Jane Mayer and her Dark Money group. Also, Nancy McLean wrote a book called Democracy in Chains that also talks about that. And Mitch McConnell, the reason why he is in the position he is of leadership is because of the money he raises. That's how you get positions in the Senate and in the House, is how much money you raise for the parties and things like that. So that's how you get leadership positions and things like that. And it doesn't surprise me that he does that. They're also connected with the organization called ALEC, American Legislative Exchange Council, that is actually basically a Republican bill mill that writes a variety of things that are pro-business, usually anti-civil rights, like the Real ID law, Stand Your Ground law. Those are two ALEC bills, but also the tax break bills. And they do it in not just federally, but on a state level. What I want to address about that thing is because one of the things I'm most concerned about is gerrymandering. We are in a redistricting year, and in many states, the legislature who's in power is control of drawing the districts. Here in Washington, we have a bipartisan commission, so we don't have the legislature controlling the districts, but in many states, that's the case. And unfortunately, the Republicans that control that, they don't have to be transparent about that process and will draw the districts how they want to, which could eventually get to the point where the Republicans get control of the House of Representatives as well as the Senate again. But there's a lot of efforts to try to prevent that, but I am concerned. The thing is if that did happen, I guarantee Mitch McConnell will get rid of the filibuster because it suits him. So I don't think the Democrats would even have a chance to even use it because they would just get rid of it. So that's one thing. In fact, I just attended a seminar this afternoon where oh, and I forgot his name, the gentleman that wrote The Kill Switch, all about, if you're looking for a good book that just came out this year on the filibuster, called The Kill Switch, and I forget his name, Jettleson, I believe. But he was talking about that, and he said, and so were a couple other people saying, I guarantee that if the Republicans got a control of the Senate again, they would just get rid of the filibuster as they saw fit. So I do believe that that's not necessarily an issue right now, because things have gotten so partisan. There used to be actually compromise. You know, the filibuster was used to get compromise in the past, especially before the Obama administration. But once Obama came to office, it was used really to obstruct his agenda. And you can reason why for a lot of that, but it really got really out of hand with Obama. And then the Dems used it a lot when it came to Trump, because they were really concerned about what was happening there. I don't know if that answers your question, but I think the Republicans getting back in power would just get rid of it if it suited them.
I'm just 35.
Yes,
What's
thank
going
you.
on?
Thank you, Jackie. Adam Gentleson, that was his name. I forgot his name there, but that's a good book out called The Kill Switch. I've seen him do a couple presentations in the last month on this. Deborah has her hand up again. Did you have another question, Deborah, or was that up from before? I don't know.
No, she doesn't. Okay, you need to unmute yourself again.
Okay.
Great, thank you.
This is slightly off the subject, but it's about gerrymandering. I've seen some of the presentations that Fixed Democracy First and Cindy have done with the League of Women Voters. And part of what I learned in that is that the shape of a district is not the determinant of whether it is gerrymandering or not. Because in order to create districts that are representative, they sometimes have to have odd shapes, and the most compact ones aren't necessarily the most representative. Do you want to talk about that a little bit, Cindy?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I think we do get hung up on the shapes, because sometimes the shapes can really be unusual and we wonder what that's about. But sometimes the shapes can give us also a clue that there might be an issue. There's basically two ways to gerrymander a district. One is called cracking and the other one's packing. So you crack a district in the way that you're trying to split people up to dilute their vote, a certain group. Oftentimes it's a community of color, but it could be some other, or Democratic district. Oftentimes it's around party too. So you kind of split the district or split the people up in the district so they dilute their power. And so that's one common way. The other one is packing, where you pack everybody into a district to also dilute their power by not spreading it out and kind of restricting their power to maybe just one or two districts rather than it being there. So we've seen cracking and packing are the two ways that you can gerrymander, but you're right, Deborah. It's not about the shape of the district, it's about who's in the district. You know, who's getting represented? Is it more fair? Is it more balanced? In Washington, with our bipartisan redistricting commission, like in 2010, when it was run, they really split the tribal communities, like the Colville Nation, Yakima Nation, the reservations were split in half. So say an Indigenous person was running for office on their reservation, half the people on the tribal lands couldn't vote for them. And that was a big issue. So that's one thing we're working with the League and others. We have a new organization, or actually the coalition's got a new name, Redistricting Justice for Washington, where we're trying to prevent those type of things from happening and keeping an eye on it. But yeah, that's an issue. We're better off than many states around gerrymandering issues. Did that answer your question or explain that enough, Deborah?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that was a real eye opener for me that when you look at the map, the map doesn't tell you whether it's gerrymandering or not.
Yeah, you want to look at the demographics, who's living in the area, because you have to have a certain amount of people. And sometimes you do have to kind of draw a little thing over to pick up some other people to stay within the guidelines of redistricting. And Washington won't be getting any more new representatives. We're going to stick with 10, but there are some states that are going to change, like Texas is going to get 2 to maybe 3 new representatives. California may stay the same. It may lose 1, it may gain 1. We don't know. So we won't have all that data until September this year because they're behind on the census data. But I am concerned about the states controlled by Republicans that are in charge of redistricting, because they're just, I mean, that's what they're going to do. They're going to gerrymander. Or gerrymandering is, I guess, the proper pronunciation, but everybody knows it as gerrymandering. Anybody else have any comments or questions about the filibuster? Or, I mean, I can speak about any democracy reform effort that if you have other questions too.
Yeah, I have a question for you. I went to your Wednesday chat on HR 1 in the Senate. Do you actually believe something that complex has any remote chance of passing the Senate? It seemed so, I mean, it took an hour just to explain it in an outline. And I thought, you know, that is definitely not a bumper sticker, you know, and how in the
That's the
world?
truth. I'll tell you, you cannot get HR 1 for the people on a bumper sticker. That is the truth.
And so I wondered, do you have a sense of if there even a remote chance? It's got so much in it that I was just overwhelmed by, I mean, not that I was against it, I thought it was great, but it was really just almost horrifying as to how long and convoluted and difficult to understand it is.
Yeah, and I just touched on the highlights of it. Boy,
Right.
I know it's very complicated. I think you're absolutely right. And I think that's a good question. I think the reality in the Senate is that, especially the way it's written and how much it's in it, like you said, in the threat of the filibuster, I think it's probably going to be chopped up. I think there might be parts of the bill that get moved forward, and then there's parts of the legislation that will probably not move forward. I know there's some things in there that are popular with across the board. Like we know the campaign finance piece is very popular with Republican voters, not the Republican legislators, but Republican voters, disclosure and accountability. But I think the reality is, I don't think it's going to pass the Senate the way it is. I think you're absolutely right about that, Barbara.
Okay,
I
because
think it's just too much in there. And I respect that. And that's one reason why we support, and it's not even a perfect bill. There's some things in there we wish were stronger or a little bit more defined or sorted out. I think it's going to be broken up, if anything.
okay, yeah.
There'll be a whole lot of amendments, I'll tell you that. But it looks like it may even go up for debate as early as June, I think, June, July.
Okay.
I think the bill that has a better chance of passing if the Dems can deal with the filibuster issue is the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act that would strengthen the Civil Rights Act of 1965, bring back preclearance. Because I don't know if you know that 2013 Supreme Court decision, Shelby versus Holder, really gutted the Voting Rights Act. And I think that's the bill that has a better chance of getting through. We support that one too.
Oh, okay. Thank you. I'm seeing Carol Sullivan has a question. Hi, Carol. Unmute yourself.
Won't let me. Oh, there we go. Okay, so Cindy, in the HR 1 or the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, do you suppose there might be some parts of that that could be pulled out and passed under reconciliation? Are there any parts that you?
Possible. I mean, I think it's possible that there's some components that they could, create some type of reconciliation over, not necessarily around the money and the taxation piece, but they might be able to go, okay, wheel and deal to get parts of it passed. Yes. It's a very interesting scenario with the Senate. The House is much easier, though. The House has a chance of, I read recently that the House may turn Republican in 22, which is not good. And so, but I think there's a possibility, Carol, that might, or they may create, or at least make some new rules around that particular bill. Maybe they say, okay, we have to allow reconciliation on, say, voting bills or something like that. So they could pick a particular topic and reconcile for that. Just like they did for the taxation in the budget stuff.
Okay.
Can I add, while I'm not on mute, can I ask one more question? Is it worth running the risk of, is it worth getting rid of the filibuster just to pass the Voting Rights Act and the HR 1? Sarah's agreeing. I think we need to get the Voting Rights Act passed, but I'm a little bit leery about totally getting rid of because they're going to come right back and do the same thing in a couple of years if the pendulum swings the other way as far as who's in control. Is that really?
I think the reality is that I from a democracy standpoint, I don't think the filibuster really helps. And in the way the demographics are moving, and I think this is one reason why you see the Republicans doing some of the things that they're doing in states across the country with, voting access and limiting voting access and creating all these bills, is because demographically in a few years, they won't have any numbers. They won't have the numbers anymore. They either have to, I really think the Republicans either have to change their tune, or at some point they're gonna not be able to be elected in the way they have been, especially president or Senate or even Congress. I think they may end up losing complete control of that if they continue down this path, because the demographics are showing that the younger population is much more open-minded about things and embraces more diversity and has a different attitude. I'm not saying the Democrat Party is perfect. It has a lot of room for improvement, as many of you probably will know that, working with the Democrats. It's not a perfect situation either, but at least I think they're moving in the right direction. But younger people, once they become to power, it's going to be a different ballgame. The Republicans will not be able to win them over, not in the numbers that they need. That's one reason why they're restricting voting on college campuses.
Yeah.
Barbara?
Yeah. Valit Jr.
If I may, I have a question for Cindy, if I may.
No, go ahead.
The slight change of the discussion, I'm terrified of Kim Wayman, the current Secretary of State in Washington State. I know, regrettably, we couldn't get her out during the last elections. And I strongly feel that she is working with the Republicans, and especially with Mitch McConnell being so strong, controlling the money, and all of this influence. What's your view on that? How do you see it? I'm just really worried that she will be able to drive some of these Republican agenda, whether it's gerrymandering or selecting specific individuals to win in certain districts. Please calm me down a little bit, Cindy. How do you see that?
She doesn't have any control over how we draw the districts in the state. She has no control whatsoever over that. So she can't influence any type of gerrymandering situation. For a Republican, she's definitely more of a moderate. She is not a Trump Republican by any chance. In fact, I even saw an interview with her that she was even toying with the idea that she may end up having to join the Democratic Party at some point. She was the only Republican elected to a statewide office in this last election, mainly because she has not bought into the voter fraud stuff and things like that. And she has been good around election security. So I don't think Kim Wyman is a bigger threat as some other people in the state, like Erickson and people like that, who are putting in bills to like get rid of voting by mail and stuff like that. She does defend the system. I think she doesn't act like a regular or the Trump Republican. So she doesn't have as much control right now as you think. And there's a good possibility this might be her last election too, if she stays a Republican, the way the state's moving.
Good. Thank you.
She doesn't worry me as much as some of the others.
And just I'm worried that she says something and then she does something behind the scenes, and that was my worry. I mean,
we haven't seen that, because the one thing about the Secretary of State's office is it's very open. I mean, she is against some of our legislation that we're trying to push forward, like ranked choice voting and things like that. So she's not always a friend to the reforms we're working on, but I don't think she's doing anything sneaky behind the back to interfere with elections. I think she does have some integrity around the security of our elections, and she's done a good job around election security issues and preserving the election. And even when she was challenged that the election was a fraud, she was saying, no, it's not. And she was defending the results in the state. Lauren Culp, when he was going after her and things like that, she stood her ground. So I think as far as that goes, she doesn't worry me as much as some others do, like people like Lauren Culp.
Thank you. Very nice.
I have a question. You were talking about elections. This is sort of off the topic with the filibuster. And it's true that younger people are tend to be more democratic or less restrictive in their thinking. However, what good is that if nobody can vote? And that's my concern, is that who cares if 90% of the people are Democrats, if only 5% of them can vote? And that's a real big concern of mine. Of course, I follow Georgia real closely because I have kids that live in Atlanta, but it's just nuts. And I think that's something the Democrats really need to really concern themselves with. That, great, everybody agrees with them. We want them to have everything, and look what's happening. They can't vote. And, that to me is more of a concern than where people are going to be going in terms of their philosophy or what they would prefer. If you have to stand online for 6 hours in 90-degree heat, can you vote, And that's extreme, but it's all over the country.
Yes.
Making it impossible to vote, or very, very difficult.
Yes, but what's interesting this time that is unusual is the business community speaking out about it. I usually don't see that. And we know that some of the business leaders were working with the Republicans behind the scenes, say in Georgia, around this stuff. But then as soon as they started getting called out, they changed their tune, because the backlash against business for coming out against voting is bigger than I've ever seen it before. So I think there's a tide that's shifting, that it's the stuff that they're doing in the certain states. And I'm not saying it won't have an impact, because it will, but it's so unpopular on so many levels that I just don't think in the long run it's going to benefit them. And it also interferes with their own voters getting out to vote. So they're kind of shooting themselves in the foot with this stuff. It's not helping them either, but they're so scared, because this is what you see at the end. The Republicans are on their last leg, from what I see. And I'm not saying it's going to end tomorrow, but in my lifetime, the Republican Party is not going to be relevant as much as they are today in the next 20 years. I think there's going to be a big shift. I think you're going to see reforms come through that are more like alternative voting systems like ranked choice voting, proportional representation, where you're going to get a mix of different parties, where you're going to get more progressives. And yeah, you may get a few more conservatives here and there, but they're not going to have the relevance that they do now. The Republicans have sided with, the Trump people and religious right and other things. They don't really care, most of them, about religion or abortion. It's about money. It really comes down to money and the funders and things like that. And it's just not working in the long run. It's just not a plan that's going to be viable for them in the long run. Now, if the Democrats were smart, they would really begin to start embracing that and doing more outreach and becoming more open to new ideas that are coming their way, because that would make them continue to be relevant and strengthen the party, I think. And eventually, I think we need more than two parties if we really want to be a true democracy. And I know I'm speaking to a bunch of Democrats, but the reality, and I vote definitely more on the left, that's for sure. But the reality is if we really want to become more of a true democracy, we're going to have to adopt types of systems like Europe, New Zealand, Australia have, where it's a more proportional based system.
Yeah, that would be great. Okay. Does anyone else have any questions or comments that they would like to make?
Beautifully done. Thank you very much, Cindy.
Yeah, Cindy, this was very, very interesting. I was going to, I'll let Cindy go, and I was going to give, Jan Robinson wanted to make a quick announcement. Is she still here?
Yeah, cheers.
Jan?
Go ahead.
So do you
Jan.
want me to go then? Is it time for me to
No,
sign off there?
I just want to let you go. Is there anything else that anyone would like to ask Cindy?
We
Okay.
appreciate the presentation. Thank you.
Yeah, Cindy, it was great. Thank you so much.
You're
And I really-
welcome. Yeah, and feel free to email me or reach out if you have any other questions. I'm happy to help in any way I can to move this stuff forward.
Yeah,
Thank you
you're
so much
very-
for having me.
and you're so encouraging. Thank you. I feel like somebody who really knows what's going on is making me feel a lot less, let's say, negative, So thank you. I really love what your presentation, and on Wednesday when I have time, I really, really like it. So thank you so much for all you're doing.
Thank you, everyone, for having me, and have a good evening, everyone. Good
You
night.
too. Good night. Thank
you very
you.
much, Cindy.
Okay, for the rest of us in Skagit, Jan Robinson sent me, would like to make an announcement, and the way the computer was this before, it didn't work. So Jan, do you want to kind
I
of
think
make?
I'm on. Can you hear me?
Yes, good. We've got you.
Wonderful.
Coming.
Well, one of the ways that we actually make sure that the filibuster could go away permanently is to have more engaged Democrats like all of you. So what my job is with the Skagit County Dems is to recruit precinct officers. And Wim is one currently, Brad is another, and Valit, of course. So actually, I'm here tonight, and there's Wim and Brad. And Carol, are you as well? Wonderful, thank you very much. And I recognize a number of names, and I know you've been precinct officers in the past, but may not be now, but we'd love to have you. Or if you have any recommendations for people in your neighborhoods or near your neighborhoods. And I actually, if Brad, could I share the screen just for a minute? I can't tell which one's going to come up, so just bear with me.
Yeah, I'll turn sharing on here for everybody. There you go, Jan. You should be good now.
Let's see if I can get this up. This is the one I want to share. I'm gonna try it one more time. Maybe I have too much open. Somebody has told me that in the past, that I have too many things open. Well, what I'll tell you is I have a map of, I asked the county GIS to make me a map just of Fidalgo Island, so that you could see what the precincts are for Fidalgo Island. And I'm happy to send it to anybody that wants to think about a neighbor that might want to be a precinct officer. What I really am looking for is somebody who knows your neighborhood or wants to get to know your neighborhood and can help us organize young people, the diversity of the neighborhood, and just all the elements that are important in your neighborhood. And you can call me, you can call Valit, and we'd love to talk to you about being it. I have some specific neighborhoods, and I'm not sure if you know your precinct numbers, but you might recognize them. So I do know that some people from Guimas actually come to Fidalgo Dems and are members, even if they don't come on a regular basis. So we need somebody in Guimas. We need somebody in 201. 201 is Capsani. 204, which is just this side that would be south of Capsani.
Yes.
Then there is 211, which I think is still considered Old Town, and 222 and 223, which are more or less Skyline. Am I correct about that? Rita, if she were here, would be telling me which one it is. And then 225. And then 225. Okay. And I'm happy to send you the list. We have an important influence on Skagit County elections. And so we have most of our precincts, with the exception of Valit's, Brian Adams, and mine, are mostly blue. So we really like to have them active and voting. So Valit is out in Dewey, I'm out at Rosario, and Brian is out at Fidalgo. And those are outside Anacortes, as you may or may not know. But we're an active group down there. So maybe we'll make a little bit more influence on turning them a little bit more blue during this next election. We hope so.
Okay, Jan, why don't you put, why don't you put your name and contact information in the chat? So
I will do that.
So if anybody would like to contact you, they can. The other things is, if you don't get to the chat and anybody on would like more information from Jan, I have her contact information as well.
Wonderful.
So that.
And Valit has my contact information too. And please feel free to contact Valit as well. And he'll have the map. He doesn't right now because I got it this evening. But Valit will have the map and the list of precincts that we're looking for. He has that. So I'm going to put it in here.
Great.
Thank you very much for letting me talk to you folks.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jan.
Thanks. Thank you, Jan.
Oh, no, great. I really appreciate you coming. And, you know, we can keep pushing that at the meetings to get people involved. It looks like Carol Sullivan has her hand raised again. Carol, are you unmuted? Okay, you're still muted.
I know. Oh, there we go. Okay, it's been an effort tonight to get unmuted.
Oh, okay.
Two things real quick. Fixed Democracy First has a great happy hour on Wednesdays at 5 p.m. and I know several of you have been there. Cindy gives a great review of what happened in the news in the past week, and then she delves into depth in a particular topic. I don't know what it is tomorrow. And then she also is now doing little discussion breakout rooms after 6 o'clock. It's really, I found it very interesting, and I managed to go most Wednesdays. If you know of anybody who you think would have enjoyed this presentation tonight but wasn't here, Skagit League of Women Voters Action and Advocacy Group is having Cindy on Monday at 10 a.m. to do the same presentation. And I've also asked her to list the parts of HR 1, 2, because I think people need to see those kind of broken down. So if you know of anybody, I listed the meeting ID for Zoom in the chat, or Barbara knows how to reach me too. So anybody
Yeah,
that missed it tonight, we can do it again, Monday, 10 a.m.
right. And if anyone knows anybody who missed this and would like to, Zane Butler will be putting out the YouTube, because Brad Kloor, who is our host and fearless host leader, was going to put this together to make sure that Zane has what he needs, so people who can't come or couldn't come have access to that. And that's really, really important as people want to learn more about what's going on. So thank you again, Brad.
I do have a special request.
Absolutely.
And that is that Jackie and Dave over there, they got to show us their new puppy.
Oh, all right.
You know, because Jackie's a politician, she gets to have these kinds of privileges.
All right.
As our
Jackie, way to
treasurer,
go.
I happen to be, is that a lab or a golden retriever there, Dave?
Let's see.
Hey.
Oh, two.
Oh, this is
Very nice.
precious.
Oh, how
How
adorable.
precious.
Great
It
word.
doesn't get any cuter than that, does it?
No, nothing gets cuter than a little golden lab.
Very nice.
Okay, that's enough, or I'm gonna have to get one.
What a way to get to close to an end to a meeting with the cutest little puppy ever. I am very partial to dogs, so very much. Thank you for sharing. Too cute. All right. Thank you, Brad. What a nice thing to do.
Thank
So
you,
is
Barbara.
any, I think we're coming to the end unless somebody else has something that they need to share. I think we had a really good presentation. I hope everybody learned something. Thank you for coming, everybody. And again, if anyone needs to contact me, if they want some more information of things that are, please feel free to. And if I don't have the information, I'll try to find it for you. So anything else before we close our meeting?
Thank you. That was a very nice meeting, very informative.
Very good.
Appreciate
Yeah,
it.
I agree. She's great. Oh, well, actually, Corrine just raised her hand before we leave. Hi, Corrine. You need to unmute yourself. Here you go. Corrine, you're muted.
I know.
There you go.
Oops, Corinne, you just muted yourself again.
Unmute yourself, Corrine. Can we unmute her?
She has to unmute herself.
Why?
There
There
you
you
go.
go. Now you got
Unmuted.
it.
Oh, this is ridiculous. Our next meeting will be Tuesday, May 11th
Okay.
on Zoom.
Thank you for reminding me. And we don't know quite the exact details yet. Okay.
Very nice.
Thanks, Corinne. Appreciate that. I forgot. It's at the end of my list and I didn't read it. Thank you for your help. Okay. Time to go, folks.
Thanks,
Getting
you
dark.
all. Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody. Thank you. Thank you.
Bye, thank you.